guess it's official. The lunatic from Mar-a-Lago is running for president again. Oh boy. If there was ever a time when you can say, here we go again, that would be it. Now, I didn't watch the announcement, so I'll predicate my commentary and my remarks by starting off that way. And the reason I didn't watch it is because, one, I don't want to have to put myself through it again. It was bad the first time. The second time was awful. And the third time I felt was not going to get any better. So I didn't watch it. But I've heard about it, and people have commentated about it. So I thought, well, let's take the trip back down memory lane. Because in order to know where you're going, you kind of have to know where you came from. You know, when you're lost, you gotta usually try to retrace your steps. Now, let's say this. You've heard the phrase, won't get fooled again, right? Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. Is it true? America won't get conned by Don again. Is that true? Only time shall tell. But in a lot of what was said, it was this notion that all of the problems we saw in that administration for 4 years really only started after March of 2020 with COVID. He really tried to excuse all of the rest of his administration and say that COVID was what led to all of his undoing. I couldn't believe it. But then I could, because he's such a narcissistic bastard. Now, let's rewind the tape way, way back. Because there's going to be a lot of young people who in 2024, this is their first election voting. So they should know what happened. So they don't get conned by Don again. Because that's what he's trying to run on us. A con job again. Even before this lunatic took the office, even before, you know, he talked a lot about division in our country. And he tried to blame his predecessors, his successor, for the division in the country. He didn't mention that he was responsible for any of the division in this country. Was that surprising to me? Of course not. Absolutely not. You're going to see a consistent pattern when I start this off. So let's hit on the division, shall we? Division. Let's start by asking a simple question to the audience. This is a yes or no. Is it divisive to create a conspiracy theory surrounding the president, saying that the president was not born in the country, and therefore that president has no right to be president? Is that uniting or dividing? Because long before he became the clown in chief, it was just the clown. For months, Donald Trump went all around this country saying that Barack Obama was illegitimate because he wasn't born in this country. He was born in Kenya. And he alone demanded that the president release his birth certificate. Now, there's no requirement to release your birth certificate, just like there's no requirement to release your tax returns. Generally, candidates seeking the office release their tax returns, not their birth certificate. Let's start there. Anyway, President Obama had to release his long-form birth certificate to satisfy a uniting figure. Only in Donald Trump's mind is he a uniting figure. But we'll go with that. A conspiracy about the first African American president not being legitimate, being illegitimate. Donald Trump spreading conspiracies. That's going to become a common theme too. We'll pocket that off to the side. The first African American president being forced to release his birth certificate to, I don't know, appease racists who didn't vote for President Barack Obama to begin with, who didn't want an African American as president to begin with. But to appease these individuals, their birth certificate was produced. Now, we all can agree that that's divisive. Some of us will lie and say, no, that's not divisive. But we have to disregard the trolls. There's a lot of trolls. We have to disregard them. The rest of us who are normal-minded will agree that's divisive. Now, sticking with our theme of before the clown in chief, there was just the clown. Let's talk about the campaign itself, campaigning for the office of the presidency. It wasn't like a normal campaign in 2016. We all can agree. You know, usually people show up to political events. They might heckle the speaker. They might collapse. There might be some jeering and prodding. There might be long lines at the restroom. Usual stuff. Oh, but not 2016 and not at Trump rallies. No, no, no. We're talking about fights breaking out inside the rallies. We're talking about people punching. People throwing things at each other outside the rally events. And then, this uniting leader yours truly, did he go on television? Fox News, I believe. Didn't he call in Fox News and say, hey, the person who punched that individual who was anti-me, I'm going to pay his legal fees? Didn't he say that? Come on, you haven't contracted amnesia. Did he not condone political violence? Yes or no? That's what I thought. I thought so. Okay. Offering to pay the legal fees of an individual who punched another individual because he was heckling the speaker. Now, we've all been to events where people get up and start heckling. It's frustrating because you want to hear the speaker, not the heckler. So you're like, get out of here, bum. And you wait for the security to pull the person out. You don't start punching people at rallies. It was unheard of, unseen, until Trump came along. And then it became the norm at his events. There wasn't one time where fights broke out. Go back and rewind the tape. Rally after rally after rally after rally. Local media is reporting violence breaking out inside the Trump rallies. And the speaker, who you're there to hear, telling his supporters, rough them up, beat them up. Condoning political violence, this uniting figure. Remember, there was no division. That really sounds uniting to me. People punching and beating people up who disagree politically. Never happened at political rallies before Trump. Never. And if it did, show me where. Because his cult is so enamored by his con job. But these are hardcore facts that you're going to have to provide receipts to dispute. Because he says that the division is a product of his successor, as though there was no division even before he became president. What a load of what we call bullshit. Yes, that's what it's called, bullshit. So we got fights breaking out at the rallies, and conspiracy theories about the president not being an American citizen. Now we'll go to promises that were made. You know, a lot of what Trump and Pence said was promises made, promises kept. They kept the promises to their rich donors. They did the tax cuts. They kept the pledges and the promises made to their evangelical Christian base that they would put on fanatic fringe judges to the bench. They did that. But when it came to the other promises, they weren't necessarily kept. First and foremost, he said, I'm going to make America wealthy again. Interesting. In the final year alone, I want you to understand this, $6.1 trillion were spent in 1 year. Now, some people will say, oh, a lot of that went towards COVID. And this is true. 6.1 trillion. No president had ever lost more jobs than they gained over the course of their entire term. More jobs were lost in America than were created under Trump. First president in American history to have that happen to. So far I'm not seeing the wealthy again part. Let's talk about the border wall. A lot of people supported Trump because of that wall. You remember the promise, right? Mexico was going to pay for the border wall. Our dear neighbors. Now, they weren't asked politely, hey, Mexico, you have an issue. Could you help fund this border wall? It's going to benefit you too. They weren't asked. They were told that they're going to pay for a border wall. And Mexico said, no, we're not. And do you know how much money Mexico gave to construct? Whatever that is on the southern border. Do you know how much money Mexico gave? $0 and 0 cents. They didn't send a penny. See, when you go around trying to bully people and telling them what they're going to do, people are like, no, you're not going to bully me. So Mexico didn't send a penny. Now there was some construction, remodeling, as I like to call it, of damaged areas along the border with something that is not a wall. Look, that structure that they put up isn't a wall. And so a lot of people got frustrated. They said the wall was not built. Now, apparently, during the announcement, he took credit for building the wall. Then he disparaged that the wall didn't get built and blamed President Biden. And then he took credit again. Now, everybody talks about our current president's gaffes, misspeaks. But how can you take credit for something and then blame the administration for not doing it when you said you did it? Apparently that happened 3 times in the speech and nobody pointed that out. I'm thinking, wait, did the wall get built or not? I know Steve Bannon fleeced some people. But did the wall get built or not? Well, judging from what conservatives say about how problematic the border is, apparently the wall must not have been built. Or it wasn't constructed good enough. I don't know. They're still complaining about the border. But they said Mexico was going to pay for the wall. Go and tell Mexico they're going to pay for the wall. That's what their leader told the American citizens. He said we wouldn't have to spend our taxpayer dollars on it. Mexico was going to build it for us. Oh, you thought I forgot that he said that? No. He said Mexico is going to pay for the wall. And now conservatives are saying we should pay for it. But that's not what they originally said before. I just want to make that clear. Because now they're singing a different tune. Now that Mexico told them to go fuck themselves. I know what was said. Mexico said, like the hell, we're going to pay for the wall. You know, I thought it was love thy neighbor. reality is demand that thy neighbor build things for you with conservatives. Make America safe again. Oh boy. Oh boy. We know America was safe under the careful tutelage of Donald Trump. We know. It was real safe. Anybody remember Charlottesville, Virginia? This was well before the pandemic of 2020. Charlottesville, Virginia, the Unite the Right. In 2017, right after the lunatic took office, there was a Unite the Right rally. And basically what that meant was Christians were going to get together with fascists and Nazis. And they were going to go marching and protesting people who aren't like them. And they went to Charlottesville. And we saw how uniting the country was. We saw how safe America was. Does anybody remember long before Darrell Brooks took his vehicle and drove it into a crowd and became demonic? Conservative neo-Nazi and Christian American Alex Fields Jr. got in his vehicle and drove at high speed into a crowd of counter-protesters, murdering Heather Heyer. Now, does anybody remember what the lunatic from Mar-a-Lago did? Did he try to unite the country? No. He said they were very fine people on both sides. He didn't contact Heather Heyer's parents and send his condolences as the leader of the country. He didn't say that there would be justice for what happened and the perpetrator would be held accountable. No. He didn't do anything that was uniting. Look, I was no fan from the beginning. I told a lot of people, if the lunatic gets elected as your leader, your country will be over as you know it. And people were like, oh, that's hyperbole. Now, you go outside and you look around. And your country is over as you know it. See, this is what happens when you don't listen to the universe. You're going to listen whether you want to or not. I could see that idiot was trouble from a mile away. And most people could too. I don't want to hear about the lesser of two evils. No. That's not why Americans supported Donald Trump. You supported Donald Trump, Americans, because you're racist and you're misogynistic. That's it. You didn't want to go from having a black president to a female president. It was just a leap too great. And so you went with someone you knew was deeply problematic. And then people wonder why there's problems. Interesting. Now, there was a chant at the Lunatics rallies. A lot of his supporters would chant, and it would go, "Lock her up." You remember that? Lock her up. Lock her up. And they were chanting this about Hillary Clinton. He wanted his political opponent to be locked up, because he would repeat it too. And see, this is how the universe works as well. You put out all of that dirt and all of that hate, and eventually it circles back around to you. Who are they talking about locking up now? Oh, him. Talking about locking him up now. I'm just saying, that's how the universe works. Anyway, was that uniting or dividing? Because you politically disagree with someone, you want them to be locked up, and you have your supporters chant that shit. Never happened before. Yes, people boo their opponent because they disagree with their policy, but nobody comes to a rally and chants to lock up their opponent. It'd be like when Putin has a rally in Russia, and he's running up against his opponent, and his supporters are saying, "Poison that opponent, poison that opponent." And Putin goes, "I'm going to poison my opponent." Unheard of, undemocratic, very divisive. Donald Trump in a nutshell. Safety. The community of Charlottesville is still to this day reeling from what happened in 2017. You remember the guys with the tiki torches at night? Jews shall not replace us. Blood and sword. They look very uniting too. They look like they love their fellow American citizen very deeply. You see, you'd have to contract amnesia to believe the nonsense that was stated in this very recent announcement concerning another run for the presidency by the lunatic from Mar-a-Lago. Safety. Does anybody remember El Paso? The individual who went into the Walmart, and because he was so fueled with hatred for immigrants, he shot up the Walmart full of people. He explained why he went to that Walmart. Because he hated Latino Americans, Latino people. Anybody remember the Tree of Life synagogue attack? The individual stated that he despised Jewish people, and that's why he went into the synagogue and started shooting people. These things happened long before COVID. Remember the individual in Las Vegas at the concert inside the hotel room? He murdered 51 people in Las Vegas. Then there were school shootings, which are common under every presidency nowadays. But he promised to make America safe again. And according to the FBI, the murder rate went up. 30% increase in homicides. The largest increase since the 1970s happened under the tutelage and watch of the individual who told you he was going to make America safe again. We haven't even gotten to January 6th yet. We're just now on the mass shootings. The domestic violence and femicide rate skyrocketed. Highest rate it's ever been. Under the lunatic from Mar-a-Lago. And now he talks about crime. And now they talk about crime. But I was like, wait a minute. When this was happening, they didn't really talk about it. And they didn't really do very much about it. Now let's go to Ahmaud Arbery in Brunswick, Georgia. We're watching a man jogging, and a pickup truck comes and tries to corner this man in, and he's trying to evade them. And they get out. And the individual with the gun starts tussling and shoots Ahmaud Arbery point blank in broad daylight. Yet again, another lynching in America. And what does the president do at that time? Anybody remember? Absolutely nothing. He didn't contact Ahmaud Arbery's family. Never. No, never. He didn't send the DOJ in to investigate. No, absolutely never. He did nothing. Now that's very uniting, right? As one of your fellow citizens is being slaughtered in the street due to a hate crime, for you as the president not to care. Well, people said, okay, president doesn't care about hate crime. Time to make hate great again. And that's what the citizenry did. They made hate great again. I'll give you example after example after example after example. Because the rot starts from the top. People said, okay, if he doesn't say anything about Ahmaud Arbery, and he knows this is a lynching, it's open season, ladies and gentlemen, again. Have at it. And so next month we had Breonna Taylor lynched by the LMPD. For those of you who don't know, the Louisville Metropolitan Police Department. Remember Brett Hankerson shooting through the apartment complex with the blinds drawn? 1:30 in the morning, shooting Breonna Taylor while she was resting from being an EMT worker. So you have Ahmaud Arbery, and now you have Breonna Taylor. Fast forward to the next month. Now you have George Floyd, Derek Chauvin. knee on George Floyd's neck for 9 minutes and 22 seconds. So back to back to back. So much for safety. So much for unity. And then the citizenry said, hey, what's going on here? This is becoming problematic. And they rose up. But not all the citizenry. No, conservatives were making excuse after excuse after excuse for every lynching in this country. And not only that, they went out and started doing their own murdering. It wasn't all Americans. It was a group of young Americans who protested in mostly major metropolitan cities. And conservatives said they're tearing up the cities. You remember that whole narrative. They're burning and rioting and looting. Well, they saw the president for years break laws. And then they saw law enforcement breaking laws too. So some of the young people went out and said, it's time for us to start looting because the president is a lawbreaker, law enforcement is breaking the law, and nobody is holding anybody accountable. So young people said, let's go and get some Louis Vuitton and Gucci and Prada. Hey, I can't even blame them for that. Everybody was breaking the law. You remember the guy that said law and order, the biggest lawbreaker in the country. Talk about projection. Law and order. There was nothing lawful or orderly about that administration. Nothing. And then, well, that's when conservatives got upset. You know, nothing will make a conservative upset more than property destruction. You can murder kids like Tamir Rice, Trayvon Martin, and they'll find a way to justify it. You can murder EMT workers, and they'll find a way to justify it. But oh boy, if you burn down the local 7-Eleven, or you go and set a car lot on fire, ex-military individuals will come to your city and they'll execute an operation and murder you. Oh yes, that's what happened with Kyle Rittenhouse. That was a United States military operation. For those of you who have never heard that, I want to tell you. I wouldn't be surprised if it wasn't ordered out of the White House. They'll never investigate, we know. They don't really investigate the real things that we want to have investigated. So it didn't matter until a car lot was on fire for conservatives to care. And then the country was going to hell in a handbasket. And we needed some entity or something to blame, because Americans have to always blame something external. They can't blame any internal factors. So then it was the China virus. It was Wuhan. Now, every country was dealing with coronavirus. Many were dealing with it far better than America at the time. But because we have to blame someone else or something else for our issues, our leader decided to deflect the attention to another country, hundreds of thousands of miles away, and say they're responsible for why we're behaving the way we're behaving in our country. They did it to us. Don't look at my poor leadership skills, my mismanagement. No. Blame China. And while you're at it, drink bleach. I'm not even making this up. This is what happened. This is exactly what happened. So you had protests all over the country about what happened to George Floyd. And the protests also had to do with Breonna Taylor, what happened with Ahmaud Arbery, what happened with Rayshard Brooks, what happened with Jacob Blake. It was a lot. People were protesting a lot. The central thing they were protesting was the chaos. There was no order. There was chaos. The person who promised us safety, wealth, and to make us great again, well, on all accounts, that was complete and utter failure. On all accounts. None of it happened. Like I said, the only thing that was made great again was hate. And that's still true to this day. Americans hate other Americans. You can thank Donald Trump for that. People keep saying, oh, we've got to start communicating and talking. Did you just see what happened in Colorado Springs? The individual walks into a gay club, nightclub, and starts shooting people. You want us to communicate with people like that? Good luck. I'm not doing it. You can try. There's no communication. People's existence is not predicated on whether someone can wrap their mind around accepting their existence. So when Americans wrap their minds around that concept, then maybe we can have an open line of communication. Translation, I don't give a fuck what a cisgender white Anglo-Saxon male thinks about anyone else's existence. I think that's how I would translate that. Now we move on to January 6th. You know, generally after you lose anything, whether it's a basketball game, a football game, a baseball game, soccer game, you see it all the time. The players line up on the field, and one by one they shake hands. Now sometimes there's issues. There's a close call, or the referees miss something. And you're really upset that they missed it. Or you really think that should have been called a certain way. But at the end of the game, when they say the final score, you go and congratulate the other person. And you say, job well done. Sportsmanship. Now, if you do it in sports, you definitely have to do it in politics. Because politics is a form of sport. Very competitive. And emotions run high. Nobody likes to be on the losing end of a campaign. Ask Hillary Clinton. But I hate the fact that they try to compare 2016 to 2020. There is no comparison. I'm glad that Hillary's daughter, Chelsea, said this recently on The View. She said, I seem to remember my mother giving a concession speech and wishing the president well. Then I said, okay, I remember that too, but I got to go back and rewind the tape. And there she was, conceding the election, wishing the lunatic from Mar-a-Lago well, even after he chanted to lock her up. Called on a foreign adversary. Think about this. Called on a foreign adversary to meddle in a United States election. Yes, he did. He said, Russia, if you're listening, if you have those emails, please go ahead and release them. Didn't he say that? Did he or did he not call on a foreign adversary and foreign entity to intervene in an American election? Everybody said, oh, it's a joke. No, it wasn't. What would it look like if a political candidate said, hey, China, if you can hack the RNC website and get all of their financial information, please go ahead and do so? It wasn't funny. Nobody thought that was funny. It was foreign interference in an election. I want to make that clear. They said, stop the steal. Roger Stone. Anybody remember Roger Stone? Now, he coined stop the steal long before January 6th in the insurrection. That was a term he was using in 2015. They were going to use that term if he lost in 2016. They were going to say the election was stolen. So they just ran the blueprint that they already had in 2020 when he lost. Because it was already prepared in 2015. Yes, go back and check the record. Roger Stone in 2015 coined the term stop the steal. And they were all ready to go. The only thing is he barely won. So they didn't have to use the stop the steal. But when he lost in 2020, they said, okay, time to pull it out. We've already got it written up, how we're going to do it. We know this guy is wildly unpopular. He lost the popular vote by how many millions of votes the first time? So we know that more than likely he's going to lose the popular vote in 2020. And it's not looking so good as management of COVID. So get the book out, dust it off. We're just going to say that they're stealing. And everybody went, where are we going to say they're stealing? Oh, in the black community. Detroit. Milwaukee. Maricopa County. Do you know that the CEO of Overstock.com, please avoid at all costs doing any Christmas shopping with that son of a bitch. The CEO of Overstock.com, Patrick Burns, who really should be in prison. See, we talk about privilege, but we really don't talk about what it means. And the CEO of My Pillow, please don't buy any pillows with this lunatic for Christmas. Mike Lindell, So they drafted up an executive order for the lunatic. And basically, it was an Insurrection Act executive order calling on the United States military to seize voting equipment in predominantly Black American communities. Just take it. And they said they were going to have a thorough investigation and forensic analysis of the data. No, they were just going to erase your votes. That's what they were going to do. Now, for a political party that loves to say that their opposition weaponizes the Justice Department and the military, who wanted to have the United States military drafted up executive order, meaning it's written? Maybe that was one of the documents at Mar-a-Lago. All of the executive orders that Michael Flynn, Patrick Barnes, and Mike Lindell drafted up for it. All types of illegality. Look, a lot of people in Seattle don't even know this, but I'm fixing to break some news to you. The lunatic from Mar-a-Lago, not liking Mumwa in the city, he really was like signing a document away from sending the 82nd Airborne Division into the city. Now, I don't want the video to be pulled down, so I'm not going to say what I would have done. But that's how serious they were. He wanted to send the 82nd Airborne Division into the city of Seattle. I will just say this. They might have come in, but I don't think they would have left. So thank goodness cooler heads prevailed. And they told him, Mr. President, it's not a good idea to send the 82nd Airborne Division and use it against American citizens in an American city because you don't like their philosophy or their politics. It's not a good look. Can you imagine Bill Barr, who recently wrote an op-ed saying that the former president, is determined to burn down the house? I'm like, wait a minute. This is a day late and a dollar short. You were the Attorney General when he walked across the park and had people tear gas who were peacefully assembled. You know, the right to peacefully assemble and redress your government. That's what people were doing. When he walked across the park to hold the Bible upside down. Remember that bullshit? We certainly do. Oh, it was a mess. We still haven't gotten to January 6th just yet. We're getting there, though. We're working ourselves up to it. Think about that. Using the military to seize voting equipment because you don't like how people voted against you, and wanting to use the 82nd Airborne Division to, I guess, come and bomb the city. Who knows? But remember, it's conservatives to say that their political opponents weaponize the Justice Department and the military against them. Are the Republicans planning to have any investigation about the former president wanting to use the 82nd Airborne Division in an American city against American citizens? Kevin, are you planning to have a congressional investigation? concerning this. I don't think so. Then we get to January 6th. Everybody's riled up. They've been told for weeks and weeks and now months that the election was stolen. With no proof, mind you. I think they had 63 or 69 cases in court. And the court tossed all of them out. Every last one of them. There were 2 cases that I believe were heard. And those got tossed after preliminary review. Who goes 0 for 63 and then still goes to the eclipse on January 6th and says we have to fight like hell? We're never going to take back our country by showing weakness. We have to fight like hell. Now that's very unifying, right? Come on, think about that. Who are they going to fight besides their own fellow citizens whom they disagreed with? Because you know they disagreed because the outcome wasn't favorable to them. We saw it in Charlottesville long before we saw it on January 6th. When they disagreed with their adversaries, they used vehicles or guns like Rittenhouse. So January 6th wasn't a surprise to me. Not at all. I know the type of scoundrel and scum I'm dealing with. We're all Americans. No, we're not. Bullshit. You can tell that shit to somebody who just got off the boat. But please don't tell it to me. We're in polar opposite universes. I want nothing to do with people who stormed the Capitol building because their philosophy was defeated. I want nothing to do with individuals who run up to Kenosha and because they politically disagree, go and shoot people. No, I want nothing to do with those type of individuals. They're trash. They might be Americans, but we have nothing in common. It's like day and night time. They have nothing in common. They're like, they despise you. Good. I despise them. Now we're even. The feeling's mutual. I know what is rare, though. For 240 years, you had a peaceful transfer of power. You can't blame a woman for breaking this. I know. Men, you want to blame women for everything. You can't blame the Mexicans, the Chinese, the Muslims, the Jews, the blacks. No. It was a privileged son of a bitch from high society who broke democracy. For 240 years, you had a peaceful transfer of power. I don't think people really realize how important this was. You know, when the Americans, we'll call them that, when the Americans go on their gallivanting trips all around the world, they love to lecture people. And their lecture goes like this: why can't you people be like us? We're civilized. When we lose, we just leave office. We concede and we go. When you people lose, you start civil wars and riots. You're uncivilized. You're barbarians. That's why your countries are third world nations. Oh yeah, that's the diatribe in a nutshell that the Americans have been lecturing people for the better part of 240 years. Oh, they can't say that shit anymore. I hear in Beijing, they have the photos of the nooses and gallows on the Capitol ground. They have them huge, blown up. So when the Americans come and they want to lecture them about Uyghur camps and all the rest of the nonsense, they just show them the photos. And it's silence. You have no idea how detrimental that was. All that is hugely detrimental to American democracy. They love to rant and rave about Jeffersonian democracy. Now they can't do it anymore. They can't go anywhere and tell people, hey, we have peaceful transfers of power. Because everybody's going to say, no, you don't. Bring me the January 6th tape, please. You know, somebody's got to be held accountable for that. And the only person who's not playing the tribe game, and I got to commend her for not doing it, was former Congresswoman Liz Cheney. She didn't play the tribe game. She could have easily played the tribe game. Said, you know, there were discrepancies. And people believed that they were wrong. She could have easily played it off. But she didn't. She said, this is a really big deal. And Americans, whether you want to believe that it's a big deal or not, because things are not predicated on your fucking beliefs. It's a monumental deal. It's a huge deal. Nobody will ever respect this country ever again. So when he wants to stand up there and say nobody respects America, I wish I was there. I'd say, bitch, it's because of you. Who sicked a mob on their own Capitol building? You did, bitch. And if it was anybody else, they'd be in prison. But you know, he's got the high society card. I love how he's conned working class Americans to think that, well, he's one of us. He's in the same boat as we're in. Really? Really? Sure. And I got a bridge to sell you too. How many of us have estates in Mar-a-Lago? Not estates, own the fucking estate. I know some of you own boats, trailers, RVs, but I don't think you own estates as large as Mar-a-Lago. So miss me with the he's one of us bullshit. He doesn't give a fuck about you. And after January 6th, he doesn't give a fuck about the country. We all saw that. All of us. And you want want to talk about somebody who should rot in prison? It's that bastard. And I can't wait till they lock him up. I can't wait. It's going to be the biggest party ever when he's finally held accountable for everything he's done to this country. Because everything you see now is a result of what he did. Conservatives love to try to change the equation and argue about superficial things. Anti-vax or pro-vax. How about I'm neither? How about it's the fact that he was the one who sold you the vaccine to begin with? Operation Warp Speed. He said, let me do it so fast that it gets out here. Which wasn't his idea, by the way. It was the defense production, the military. They went into overdrive because they were seeing what was happening in society. And they said, we have to develop something to give people immunity to this virus. So if you're pro-vaccine or anti-vaccine, it doesn't matter. Because the lunatic from Mar-a-Lago was the one that sold you on it. Conservatives love to talk about how liberal cities locked down. Who locked down the entire country? Remember, they said 15 days to slow the spread. Apparently, word on the street is they wanted to slow the spread for 30 days. But they could only get him to agree to certain things because he didn't know what the hell was going on. You heard the audio from him talking to Bob Woodward? It's really bad, Bob. All at the same time he's telling us we're rounding the curve. By Easter, we should be out of this. You remember all that bullshit? And then as the campaign went along, it was, once my opponent takes office, COVID is going to go away. It'll just magically disappear. It was lie after lie after lie after lie. That's what it was. Because he's a pathological liar. Pathological. Narcissistic as well. It's Dr. Fauci's fault. It's China's fault. You know, the real reason Hillary wasn't prosecuted, it was my Attorney General's fault, Jeff Sessions. Rex Tillerson is dumb as a rock. Mad Dog Mattis doesn't know what he's talking about. All of these individuals he hired and then criticized and said that they're stupid. They don't know what they're talking about. They're liars. They're making mistakes. When he hired all of them. Think about that. You have a supervisor or a boss that hires you. And then all of you are hired by this individual. And when things start not going so well, your supervisor or boss blames you one by one. Never pointing the finger and saying the buck stops with me. The military, Milley, he doesn't know what he's talking about. Everybody is a problem but him. For 4 years, we had to put up with that shit. Day one in office was just as tragic and as sad as the last day. You remember the first day in office was a pot pissing contest, as they used to say. Whose inauguration crowd was bigger, mine or Barack Obama's? Mine was bigger. Do you remember that bullshit? His press secretary, Sean Spicer, brought in a huge blow-up photo of the inauguration crowd for him and said his inauguration crowd was larger than President Barack Obama's. This is his first day on the job. First fucking day. And he's pot pissing. I have a bigger dick than you do. I'm like, this is the time when you shouldn't be worried about your predecessors at all. It's your time to shine. And yet there was a manufactured conspiracy theory, nonsensical dribble talking about inauguration crowd sizes. Like anyone gave a fuck about that shit besides him. Newsflash, no one cared besides him. Half of the people that show up at inaugurations are dignitaries, public officials. You can't make it up. So what did he spend his first and second year on? Because we talk about wasted time. There was a lot of wasted time on Twitter, calling people low IQ, dumb, stupid, insulting people just for the sake of insulting, unpresidential, childish, trivial, juvenile, mean-spirited. Oh, I've got the book. I've got the receipt. We'll have to read those out when the campaign really gets going. I can't wait. Fire Trump again. That's how you make America great again. By firing that son of a bitch again. Then we'll be great. This I guarantee. I can't wait. But what did he spend the first 2 years on? Oh, I know. Healthcare. Now, remember, the former President Barack Obama had done a landmark healthcare deal. Americans have been talking about healthcare for 60 years and hadn't had it done. And it finally got done. And the lunatic comes in and says, you know what? Obamacare, as the Republicans love to call it, not the Affordable Care Act, as is legally referred to as. The lunatic from Mar-a-Lago came in and made a promise to you. He made so many promises that he didn't keep that we have to remind you of all of them. But this one was a big one. He said, I'm going to do health care. Remember, going back to the pot pissing contest. My dick is bigger than yours. Barack Obama, you did health care. I'm going to do Trump care. Does anybody remember Trump care? He said, I have a better health care plan than President Barack Obama. He kept repeatedly saying this. And I kept saying, I'd like to see it. You know, if you have a health care plan, can you show the American people? And then every time that was asked of him, he said, no, we have to get rid of Obamacare first. And then I'll do Trump care. And all the Republicans went along with this bullshit, except for one. John McCain, rest in peace. I didn't agree with him on everything, but on this he had enough sense to see through the bullshit. The con job. He didn't get conned by Don. He said, wait a minute. I've been around Washington longer than you have. I know that if you get rid of something, you first have to replace it before you can do away with something. So let me see your health care plan, Mr. Trump, President Trump. And he kept telling John McCain, I'll have it once we get rid of Obamacare. You know, just like he said, I'm going to enter into a better deal with Iran. And he tore up the Iranian deal. And then never came back with a better deal. Shocking. So everybody was looking at past behaviors as an indication of future behaviors. And they said, we don't necessarily trust you. We want to see your health care plan first. And wouldn't you know, he never produced it because there was no Trump care. So John McCain came in and walked in and gave the thumbs down. Said, I'm not going to go along with this bullshit because the vast majority of the American people like a lot of the provisions of the Affordable Care Act. Is it perfect? No. But it's better than nothing. And boy, that angered him to no end. He still hates Senator John McCain because he didn't go along with his con job of getting rid of health care for the American people and replacing it with nothing. There was no Trump care. It was bullshit care. Typical of high society bullshitters like him. So 2 years were wasted on wanting to get rid of Obamacare. Year 1 and year 2. Year 3, they did the tax cuts, I believe. Gave their wealthy donors and people who tell you to pull yourself up by the bootstrap. Can you imagine? I would just like to one day go to high society and say, wait, you have so many boots with so many straps. Why do we ever need to give you tax cuts? Why don't you pull your fucking selves up by your mini boots and your mini straps? They probably would kick me out of high society. It's true. No, but they tell you that. Pull yourself up by the bootstraps, right? So why do they need tax cuts? You know, Robin Hood stole from the rich and gave to the poor. You notice they don't really want to tell the story of Robin Hood anymore. Kind of sounds like socialism. We wouldn't want our kids to be socialists now, would we? They completely took Robin Hood out of the schools. I demand that they put the story of Robin Hood back in the schools. And they had a good moral to the story. Because that's what the rich do. They steal from us, the poor, the working class. And they give more to themselves. That's all the tax cuts did. It gave rich men who didn't need any more money because they're sick. These individuals, the wealthy, high society, they're very sick. They're greedy capitalist pigs. They don't like that terminology, but if the shoe fits, wear it. What, do you really needed an extra $1 million to go into the Cayman bank account? I don't think so. And then we got told that he's a businessman, right? We have been hearing this for a long time in America. All we need is a businessman to manage our affairs. Okay. So when there was a crisis like COVID and there was a supply shock in the system, did it come in handy to have a businessman as your president? Well, let's look at the PPP. For those of you who don't know, that stands for Paycheck Protection Program. There was so much fraud and mismanagement of the PPP money that they're still prosecuting people to this day who stole thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions, hundreds of millions. So this should have been right up the businessman's alley, right? Money, finance, managing it correctly. So much mismanagement and fraud. To the point where you go and you read on the DOJ website, and you can scroll for hours and see name after name after name of people who have been charged with wire fraud, tax evasion, due to the Paycheck Protection Program. And then companies who didn't need it got it. NBA teams received Paycheck Protection money. 5-star multi-chain restaurants. Translation, all of his corporate wealthy donors received Paycheck Protection money. And they said that they were getting it because they were going to keep on their staff, remember? But their staff, they quit. Some said, I don't feel safe coming to work, not knowing what people's status is, whether they have the virus, whether they're vaccinated, whether they want to wear a mask or not. I don't feel safe. Some said, I'm going to go on unemployment because I'm tired of how people are coming into my shop and treating me because I don't have certain supplies that they want. We remember people were in the grocery stores fighting over toilet paper in Trump's America. Oh, you all forget, they were fighting over the toilet paper? And now, his kids have the nerve to come and talk about shortages at the grocery stores. Weren't they fighting over toilet paper, Don, when your dad was president? I'm just saying. It was a real mess. And it's still a mess. And this notion that somehow the person who created the mess, after 2 years and being fired for doing a horrible job, completely atrocious job, is back to tell us he can clean up the mess that he himself made. It would be laughable, but it's America, and so it's tragic. Because there is a possibility that America will get conned by Don again. Oh yeah, there's a great possibility of it happening again. Oh yeah, there's a great possibility of it happening again. People look to their leaders to be responsible. But when you have irresponsible leaders, the people generally behave irresponsibly. January 6th and everything that happened thereafter was so predictable. It started the moment he took office. And we went back and said, no, actually, officially it started even before he took office. There was nothing ever uniting about Trump. And any American who mouths that bullshit is full of bullshit. Trump was not about uniting this country. He's not a uniting figure or an individual. His whole aura is division. I said that from the beginning, and many other people did too. You reap what you sow. And with Trump, Americans, you're reaping what you sowed. You went along with the birtherism and the racism because you didn't like seeing Barack Obama every day on your TV screens. You went along with the political violence because it's justifiable as long as you do it. I guarantee you, if tens of thousands of Arab Americans had stormed the United States nation's Capitol building, everybody would be calling for their execution in this country. So when certain people in certain tribes do things, they get a pass. That's the American way. I know. I get it. All I say is don't complain about the way things are. Please don't. Because in large part, the way things are is because of the choices Americans made. You know, they used to say you have to lie in the bed that you make. Well, now we as a society, as a country, are going to lie in the bed that we made for ourselves. And some people don't want to do that. They want to blame everyone else for their own choices. But Americans, you gave yourself Donald Trump. You got conned by Don. Not I. I was always opposed to him. From the very beginning, I saw through it. Second go around, I assisted a little bit. Said, hey, if you continue down this road, you ain't never coming back. So you said, okay, you better not continue down this road. But you went pretty far down the rabbit hole. I'm not going to lie. QAnon. Anyone ever heard of this bullshit? QAnon. Apparently this starts in October of 2017. These cryptic internet messages from a figure by the name of Q. And this individual alleges that people are sex trafficking and harming children. And what do you know? It's all of Donald Trump's political adversaries. Isn't that interesting? Now, here's a conspiracy theory for you. If I wanted to, well, become a dictator and want to be a king over a country that has no kings, wouldn't I have to say all of my adversaries are pedophiles, child killers? Therefore, make me king. The real and final question is, who's going to go along with the con from Don in 2024? Look, if the first go round was horrible and the sequel was atrocious, the trilogy, oh my goodness. I don't even know if your country is going to survive the trilogy. That's still an open question, Americans. Look, if it were up to me, here's what I'd do. It's simple. I'd indict the son of a bitch. Then I would throw the son of a bitch in prison. And then I would toss the key in the Atlantic Ocean. But it's not up to me. It's up to you Americans. And, well, that can go any type of way.